A pleasant day, everyone. Welcome to the second week of midterms. For this week, we will discuss about the IgG common blood groups. At the end of this previous week, students are able to trace the discovery of the other blood group systems and the blood group collections, explain the basis of ISBT nomenclature for the blood group system and the blood group collections, characterize the phenotypes, antigens, and antibodies of other blood group systems and blood group collections. Discuss the frequencies of the antigens and the antibodies of the other blood group system and the blood group collections. Explain the importance of the other blood group system and blood group collections. Describe how antigens, antibodies, genes, and phenotypes are correctly written. List 4 categories for classification of RBC surface antigens used by ISBT. For each of the blood group systems described, list the major antigens and common phenotypes. Describe the serologic characteristics and clinical significance of the antibodies, and identify null phenotypes. Blood group system are antigens produced by alleles in a single locus or loci, and they demonstrate the Mendelian theory like the ABO blood group system. The same with the ABO blood group system, the alleles are co-dominant. Some alleles are amorphic, meaning silent. The alleles exist but do not make the antigen, or the gene does not appear to produce a detectable antigen. So for examples for this, silent allele are JK, LU, and O. When a paired chromosome carry the same silent allele, this will become the null phenotype. Some blood groups alter antigen expression, and some naman are detected with alloantibodies. Alloantibodies are immune antibodies that are produced following to exposure of RBC, for example, blood transfusion or pregnancy. Question: saan galing ang mga pangalan ng blood group system? So, blood group systems are named after the patient or person they were discovered in, after the person who discovered them, after the location of discovery, or in some cases, after the antibody or antigen that was previously discovered. For the nomenclature, when writing the genes, it should be italicized or underlined if italics is not available, for example, in writing on the paper. The allele should be in superscript and antigens are written in regular manner. So, for example, this one. This is the antigen. This will be the phenotype. And this will be the gene. And number 1 here is the allele. There are different rules in writing the phenotype. For antigens with for letter antigens, plus or minus sign should be written on the same line as the antigen. So for example, M positive, K negative. For antigens with superscript, the superscript letter should be placed in a parenthesis on the same line as the antigen. The plus and minus sign will indicate the presence or absence of that antigen. So for example, this one, FY A positive, JK A negative. So if both antigens are tested, so both results should be written. For example, FY A positive, B negative. Antigens with numerical designation, the letters defining the system is followed by a colon, and then followed by the number representing the antigen. Minus sign should be written if the tested antigen is absent, and if multiple results should be separated by a comma. For example, this one, SC, colon, and then -1 because they're absent po yung -1, and then comma, and then 2. If there are more than one blood group system, it should be separated by a semicolon. So for example, large S positive, small s positive, semicolon, K negative, semicolon, FY A positive, B negative. So for antibodies, just add the prefix anti. So for example, anti-K and anti-FYA. Let us take a look at Table 8.1. These are examples of terminology of for genes, antigens, antibodies, and phenotypes. So these are examples of genes and they are italicized. Next, here is an example of an allele that is superscript. Next, the prefix anti is added. And then this one is the phenotype where there is a parenthesis and a plus and minus sign are written to indicate the presence or absence of an antigen. This table shows examples of correct and incorrect terminology. This column is the correct way, and this column is the incorrect terminology. So, for example, this one, M plus and negative, should be written and not in this manner. For the antibody of FYA, anti and a dash sign is added before the FYA. Not in this manner, not in this manner, and this one. So let's move on to the next slide. So, napapansin nyo, medyo magulo ang ganung klaseng nomenclature. So, in order to standardize blood group system and antigen names, the International Society of Blood Transfusion, or ISBT, formed the Working Party on Terminology for the Red Cell Surface Antigens. ISBT made the numeric terminology for the blood group systems not to replace the traditional name, but to facilitate computer storage, easier retrieval of blood group information, and enable communication in computer systems. The ISBT is a scientific society that was founded in 1935. Since 1935, the ISBT has grown into an international society where transfusion medicine professionals from across the globe come together to share knowledge to improve the safety of blood transfusion worldwide. So this is the link for their website, and they offer courses. So if you're interested in enrolling, just visit this website. According to ISBT, as of June 2021, there are 43 recognized blood group systems and 345 red cell antigens. So, ang dami. So, because of this number, the ISBT has 4 categories or classification for red cell surface antigens. The classification of red cell surface antigens are systems, collections, the 700 series, and the 901 series. Systems consist of one or more antigens controlled at a single gene locus or by two or more very closely linked homologous genes with little or no observable recombination between them. Collections consist of serologically, biochemically, or genetically related antigens which do not fit the criteria required for system status. So they are called the 200 series. 700 series are low incidence antigens with an incidence of less than 1% and cannot be included in a system or collection. And lastly, the 901 series are high incidence antigens with an incidence of greater than 90% and cannot be included in a system or collection. So these are the rules of ISBT in their terminologies. So for antigens, there is a 6-digit identification number. So the first 3 is for the system, collection, or series, and the second 3 is for the antigen. So system symbol followed by the antigen number may be used. So for example, Kel 003 or Kel with the 1L3. Then for the phenotype, it is represented by the system symbol followed by a colon, then followed by a list of antigens separated by commas. Those antigens shown to be absent or preceded by a minus sign. So this one, for example, Kel, colon, then 1, 2, 3, 4 separated by commas, and number 1 is absent, so there is a minus sign. For collections are constructed in the same way. Alleles are designated by the system symbol followed by an asterisk, this one, system symbol asterisk, and followed by the antigen number, and they are all italized. For the genotype, first will be the system symbol followed by an asterisk, alleles or haplotypes separated by a slash, and then all are italized. For the 700 and 901 series, 700 or 901 replaces the system symbol. This is a table from the ISBT. So this is the number of the system, and these are the antigen number. So for example, Kel 006 and the first antigen K 001. So you will write this 0 in 006001. This table is for an example for collections. So as you can see, for collection, it is in 200 series. Next example, this table is for the low incidence antigens or 700 series. As you can see, all the first three numbers are replaced with 700, followed by the number of the antigen. Here is the table for high incidence antigen or the 901 series. So the first three antigens are replaced with 901, followed by the number of the antigen. Now let us proceed to our main topic, the other blood groups. So first is the Kell blood group system. Kell blood group system is the first system discovered after the introduction of antiglobulin testing. So in 1946, anti-K was identified in the serum of Mrs. Kelleher. Her antibodies react to the RBCs of her newborn infant, husband, and her firstborn. So meaning they have the antigen K. K antigen can be detected on fetal RBCs as early as 10 weeks and is well developed at birth. It has a low prevalence, only 9% in whites. So in blood transfusion, receiving this antigen has a small chance. So the small K antigen can be detected at 7 weeks. Anti-K is the most common antibody seen in blood bank. It is an IgG, so it usually reacts at anti-globulin phase. Anti-K, the anti-K are induced by transfusion and pregnancy, like what happened to Mrs. Kelleher. So, IgM, naturally occurring anti-K, are associated with bacterial infection. Marsh and colleagues studied the IgM anti-K in an infant infected with E. coli, but the antibody disappeared after recovery. So, anti-K is associated with severe hemolytic transfusion reaction and hemolytic disease of the fetus and newborn. So, if a mother or if a pregnant mother is classified as making anti-K, so the father should be tested for the large K antigen. Then, if the father is large K positive, then monitoring of the baby should be done. Anti, uh, anti small k is seldom encountered. KPA and KPC antigens are low prevalence antigen from their antithetical high prevalence partner KPB. Antithetical antigen means antigens that are coded by different alleles of a single gene. A person can inherit an allele from his or her parent that codes for either a KPA antigen or KPB antigen, but not both in one gene. So, though a person can inherit both antigen, but not from the same person. So, for example, KPA is from the father and KPB is from the mother. KPA is only 2% among the whites, and KPC is even rarer. JSA is antithetical to its high prevalence partner JSB. JSA is 20% among the blacks, but fewer than 0.1% in whites. This one. These two antigens are associated with the KEL system because it was found that the KO RBCs are JSB A negative, B negative. Antibodies to KPA, JSA, and to other low prevalence KEL antigens are rare. Kasi kakonti lang yung na-expose, but they result from pregnancy and transfusions. High prevalence antibodies are also rare because few people don't have these antigens. So, for example, this one, the KPB and the small k. The gene KEL is located at the chromosome 7 at position 7q33, and the XK gene is located at the short arm of the X chromosome at position XP21.1. The KEL glycoprotein is covalently linked with the XK protein. So, this one. This is the KEL glycoprotein and the XK glycoprotein. So, they are linked with the by a disulfide bond, and that's why the KEL antigen is dependent on the presence of the XK protein. So when KEL antigens are denatured with AET or DTT, the expression of the KX increases. KO or K0 and Kmod have increased KX antigen. So I will explain that later. So DTT is dithiol tritol is a thiol reagent that dissolves disulfide bonds between cysteine amino acids, potentially affecting both red cells and antibodies. AET, or 2-amino-ethyl isothiocuranium bromide, activates the KEL antigens except KX and artificially creates KO red cells. So for the table 8.7, this shows the expression of KEL antigens on RBCs with common KO and macloid phenotypes. So the common phenotype have all the KEL antigens. Normal lang ang value ng Km but have a weak value of Kx. And possible antibody niya is allo antibody. KO phenotype lacks the expression of all KEL antigens, so none dito. This phenotype is rare and only 1:25,000 in whites. This antigen is useful in investigating complex antibody problems and can help confirm and rule out other KEL specificities. Individuals immunized or exposed with this rare phenotype will develop the anti-KU. This antibody causes HTR and HDFN. Macloid phenotype demonstrate a weak expression of small k, kPa, kPb, and JSB, kPa, and K11. This is rare, but only males could inherit this phenotype, meaning it is an X-linked through a carrier mother. Macloid phenotype is associated with mutations and deletions in the XK locus, resulting to RBCs lacking the Km and Kx antigens. Some individuals having this phenotype are also acanthocytic, which leads to chronic but well-compensated hemolytic anemia. These individuals also have the Macloid syndrome, where they will develop a slow, progressive form of muscular dystrophy and cardiomegaly. During 1971, Gilblet and his colleagues made an association between KEL phenotypes, Macloid, and the rare X-linked chronic granulomatous disease or CGD. CGD is an inability to produce NADH oxidase to kill ingested bacteria. So CGD is where children can die in overwhelming infections if not treated. Macloid males with CGD make anti-Kx and Km, and those who don't have CGD only made anti-Km. McGinnis and co-workers described a K-negative patient acquired a K-positive antigen during Streptococcus infection, and in cultures, the organism converted K-negative to K-positive, so this is evidence that RBCs acquire KEL antigens. The Duffy blood group system. Duffy system is named for Mr. Duffy, who is an hemophiliac and had multiple transfusions. In 1950, anti-FYA was described from the blood of Mr. Duffy. The following year, the antithetical antigen FYB was found from the serum of a woman with 3 pregnancies. FYA and FYB antigens are identified in fetal RBCs as early as 6 weeks of gestational age and are well developed at birth. FYA positive and FYB positive have 13,000 to 14,000 sites on RBCs, but if an individual have both antigens, each antigen will occupy half of the sites. In 1955, Sanger and his colleagues reported that the majority of the African Americans were FYA negative B negative. This null phenotype, italicized FY, and its genotype is italicized FY, is common in blacks, especially in Africa. It was also observed that this phenotype resists Plasmodium knowlesi, a monkey malaria organism. Then, later on, it was known that it can also resist infection from Plasmodium vivax, an organism that causes malaria in humans. Duffy antibodies react most in antiglobulin phase, and they could bind complement. They are associated with delayed HTR and mild to severe HDFN. The gene of Duffy ACKR1 is located near the centromere on the long arm of chromosome 1 at position 1q21 to q22. FYX antigen is a weak form of FYB. It is also depressed with FY3 and FY5 antigen. FY3 is found in the serum of FY3 is found in the serum of FYA negative and B negative individual. That individual is a white Australian woman, and it was found in the year 1971. FY3 can't be destroyed by enzymes. In the year 1973, college and co-workers discovered anti-FY5 from a serum of a child who died from leukemia. So take note, leukemia, so my multiple transfusions again. So they thought it was anti-FY3, but it reacted with not only to FYA positive and FYB positive, but also with FYA negative and B negative. FY5 is also seen in a patient with sickle cell anemia and had multiple transfusions. So plus, multiple transfusions could immunize your body and make more antibodies. And same with FY3, FY5 is not destroyed by enzymes. This slide shows the picture of the chromosomes where Kel, Duffy, and XK are located. Again, the Kel is located at chromosome 7 at position 7q33, 7q33, and the XK gene is located at the short arm of the X chromosome at position XP21-1. So this is the XP21-1. The gene of Duffy ACKR1 is located near the centromere of the long arm of chromosome 1 at position 1q21 to q22. So this one. The Kidd blood group system. In 1951, Allen and colleagues found an antibody from the serum of Mrs. Kidd, who had a HDNF infant. The antibody is anti-JKA, named after the infant John Kidd. 2 years later, JKV, the antithetical partner of JKA, was found. The null phenotype JKA minus B minus was discovered in year 1959. JKA and JKV antigens are well developed on RBCs of neonates. They can be detected at 11 weeks and 7 weeks respectively. Kidd antigens are not denatured by papain and piscine. Kidd antibodies reacts at antiglobulin phase and Kidd antibodies react at antiglobulin phase because they are IgG, but some are IgM and are made in response to pregnancy and transfusion. Kidd antibodies are difficult to detect because they demonstrate dosage, they are weak, and often combined with other antibodies. To aid antibody reactivity, enhancers like LISS or PEG could be used. So LISS or PEG promotes IgG attachment. Kidd antibodies also bind complement. The titer of Kidd antibodies declines quickly, so after a month, hindi na madedetect ang Kidd antibodies. Dahil dito, there is a need to check for the record of the patient before blood transfusion. It is also important to inform the patient to avoid HDR. Para sa next transfusion ng patient, ang patient na mismo ang magsasabi sa staff or sa doctor about his case. Because of the decreased reactivity and difficult identification, these antibodies are the common reasons for HDR, especially delayed HDR. The null phenotype has two types, the recessive and the dominant. The null JKA negative B negative phenotype lacks JKA, JKB, and JK3. Individuals having this phenotype have a defect in concentrating their urine, but they have normal levels of BUN, creatinine, and electrolytes. Polynesians have this phenotype, but only 0.9%. This phenotype is also found in Filipinos, Indonesians, and Chinese. These individuals have the homozygous silent recessive allele italized JK. Parents of italized JK offsprings and children of italized JK parents are either JKA positive B negative or JKA negative B positive and not JKA positive B positive. JKA negative B negative is also associated with a dominant allele IN open and close parenthesis JK or in JK. In stands for inhibitor. Makikita ito sa Japanese family. The dominant null phenotype adsorb and elute anti-JKA and anti-JKB and anti-JK3, meaning either JKA, JKB, and JK3 are weakly expressed on the RBC surface. In JK gene does not reside on the JK locus, but its molecular basis is still unknown. Anti-JK3 is an IgG and reactive at AHG phase. The individual making this antibody is type JKA negative B negative. So the null phenotype JKA negative B negative makes anti-JK3. But the dominant type JKA negative B negative do not make anti-JK3. So again, the recessive type of the null phenotype makes the anti-JK3 and the dominant type do not make the anti-JK3. Anti-JK3 is enhanced with enzymes. This antibody is associated with severe, immediate, and delayed HDR and mild HDFN. Autoantibodies of kid specificity is associated with autoimmune hemolytic anemia. The location for JK blood group system is in chromosome 18, Q12.3. So this is JK blood group system. So this is the proposed structure for KID protein. So one of the two proposed N glycans is uh, extracellular and is located on the third loop. So this is the first, second, third. Third extracellular loop, and the JKA or JKB polymorphism is located at the fourth extracellular loop. The Lutheran blood group system. In year 1945, anti-Lu-A was found in a patient with lupus erythematosus after transfusion. The antibody was named after the donor, Lutheran. Naging Lutheran because mislabeled ang sample. In the year 1956, Kat Bush and Channeling described the anti-Lu-B. Lutheran antigens are produced by allelic codominant genes. Anti-Lu-A are IgM naturally and react at room temperature, but some also react at 37 degrees Celsius. They can bind complement, but in vitro hemolysis has not been yet reported. They cause rare and mild delayed HDR. Anti-Lu-B react at room temperature because some are IgM and IgA, but most are IgG and react at AHG phase. Lutheran system is not complicatedly encountered because of its high prevalence. The antigens are detected in fetal RBCs as early as 10 to 12 weeks of gestational age and fully develop at birth. The antibody is influenced by pregnancy and transfusion. The Lu gene BCAM is located on chromosome 19, position 19q 13.2, along with the other genes like H, secretor, and Lewis. Table 821 shows the prevalence of common Lutheran phenotypes. Phenotype Lu-A positive B negative is only 0.15%. Lu-A positive B positive have 7.5%. Lu-A negative B positive is 92.35%, and the null phenotype Lu-A negative B negative is very rare. The null phenotype Lu-A negative B negative have three modes of inheritance, namely dominant, recessive, and X-linked. The dominant null phenotype was described in 1961, and the silent recessive null phenotype was described last 1963. In the dominant null phenotype, there is a mutation in the gene Whipple-like factor 151. So there will be extremely weak Lu antigens, and other RBCs antigens affected, so reduce yung P1, INB, ANWJ, MER2, and CD44. And this phenotype do not make anti-Lu3. The recessive type of null phenotype inherits the two silent alleles italicized LU-LU. They lack all the Lutheran antigen. So since they lack all the Lutheran antigens, they make the anti-U3. The recessive X-linked null phenotype affects male and carries trace amounts of LeuB. There is a mutation in the X-linked gene for the major erythroid transcription factor GATA1, and Lu antigens here are extremely weak, so they make no anti-Leu3. Anti-Leu3 is reactive at antiglobulin phase and is made by the recessive null phenotype LUA negative B negative only. So that's our lesson for this week. And for next week, we will discuss about the IgM common blood groups. So thank you for listening and have a great time.